The storm hit when my stepdad, Gideon, caught my arm in the dim kitchen, his voice rough with an untamed edge. I'd just staggered in, soaked from a rainy evening and reeling from a date that crashed hard, rejected, mortified, eyeliner smudging my face. He was too close, heat pouring off him, swearing I deserved better than the chaos I'd tripped into. My mom, Lila, was out cold in her room, wiped from her late shift, as his hold tightened, drawing me in until my breath hitched. Months of stolen looks and fleeting touches ignited right there, raw, reckless, dangling on the edge. What went down next turned my life inside out, and you won't believe how intense it got. I'd stumbled through the side door of our weathered house in Boise, Idaho, my head fuzzy from too many gin and tonics at a dive bar across town. My date, Bryce, had ditched me mid-evening when his phone wouldn't quit pinging. Turns out he had a side piece tucked away, and he bolted, leaving me with the bill and a stung pride. It was pushing 2 a.m., November 3rd, 2024, the house cloaked in shadow except for the faint flicker of a muted sci-fi rerun on TV. Lila, a graveyard shift nurse, wouldn't be back till dawn. I thought I'd have the place to stew alone. Then I caught the clink of a whiskey glass on the counter, and there was Gideon, 52, lean, slouched in his worn denim jacket and cargos, a little buzzed himself. He fixed up pipelines for the city, and judging by the empty glasses, it had been a brutal shift. He glanced up, saw me swaying in the doorway, and muttered, "Why were you back so early?" I kicked off my drenched sneakers, nearly tripped, and sank into the couch, spilling the whole messy tale, Bryce's bailout, the bartender's grin, my voice loud and raw. Gideon listened, sipping his drink, eyes fixed on me. When I trailed off, he set the glass down hard, leaned forward, and said he'd met plenty of Bryces, spineless jerks who couldn't own their messes. His voice was gritty, worn from years of barking orders in the field, and it stirred something in me, though I chalked it up to the booze. I laughed too sharp, said at least someone didn't see me as a total disaster. He stood, grabbed 2 sodas from the fridge, handed me one with a clink, and sat closer now, his leg brushing the couch's edge. He dove into stories of his own screw-ups, rough, real stuff about sniffing out fakes from a distance. I leaned in, hooked, his hazel eyes holding mine too long. I tossed out a shaky joke about him being my savior in faded denim, and he laughed, his hand grazing my arm, lingering. My pulse spiked, but I didn't pull away. Neither did he. Things escalated quick. He shifted closer, said I was too bright for losers like Bryce, and I fired back, half flirting, half daring, that maybe I needed someone who'd stick around. His hand slid to the couch's arm, boxing me in as he leaned close, face inches away, whiskey and motor oil thick in the air. I froze, heart pounding, thinking he might cross that line, and I might let him. Ever been trapped in a moment you know is bad news but can't escape? That was me, right there. His fingers pressed into the cushion, but then the TV blared a spaceship explosion, and he eased back, muttering about hitting the sack. I nodded quick, bolted to my room, head spinning, and crashed into bed, chest tight. Morning hit like a sledgehammer, head throbbing like a busted pipe, the kind of hangover that mocks painkillers. It was Saturday, the house quiet except for the hum of a faulty fridge. Sunlight sliced through the living room blinds where Gideon stood, pouring coffee into chipped mugs. Lila had just stumbled in, still in her scrubs, digging for cereal before she'd crash. I shuffled in, avoiding his gaze, but he slid a mug my way, steam rising. I mumbled thanks, slumped into a chair, last night's weight lingering like fog. Lila yawned, griping about a botched patient chart, oblivious to the tension simmering. Gideon leaned against the counter, sipping, and asked how I was holding up after Bryce's stunt, casual, like he was just checking in. But his look lingered, piercing, and I felt it in my bones. I shrugged, said I'd survive, tossed a sarcastic jab about my knack for picking duds. He grinned, said I just hadn't met the real thing yet, and the way he lingered on real sent a shiver through me. Lila turned, grabbing a banana, and asked what we were yapping about. I froze, but Gideon slid in smooth, saying I'd had a rough night, keeping it vague. She nodded, too drained to probe, and trudged off to shower, leaving us alone. The second her footsteps faded, Gideon stepped closer, mug hitting the table with a dull thud. His voice dropped. Last night got wild, didn't it? I nodded, sipping to buy time, and admitted I didn't know what got into me. He said he didn't either, but that sly smirk said he wasn't bothered. I laughed, unsteady, said we shouldn't make it a habit. He raised a brow, leaned in, and murmured, maybe we don't have to hit the brakes hard. My stomach flipped, and I snapped he was playing with fire. He shrugged, grabbed his jacket, said he was off to the auto shop, and left me staring into my coffee, trying to piece it together. That flirty spark from last night? It wasn't fading, it was a live wire, pulling me in. He came back later with a spark plug and a new socket wrench, acting like we hadn't just flirted with disaster. But when Lila dragged herself upstairs to sleep, he brushed past me in the hall, his hand skimming my wrist, quick, deliberate. I looked up, caught his nod, and he slipped outside to tinker with his Jeep. My phone buzzed, a friend texting about a concert, but it barely sank in. Ever notice how one spark can start a blaze you can't outrun? That's where I was, wobbling. Lila came down later, in sweats, hunting her keys. Gideon was back inside, grabbing a water, and I was on the couch, pretending to scroll. She walked in as he mumbled something about me looking sharp in the morning glow, and I coughed hard to drown it. She frowned, asked what I was choking on, and I stammered about coffee going down wrong. Gideon turned, hiding a grin, and Lila snagged her keys, muttering about a nap before shuffling off. My heart was a drum mine. He shot me a look after she left, and I knew we were balancing on a razor's edge. I spent that Saturday trying to shake the buzz that wouldn't quit after the kitchen standoff. By night, Gideon suggested we hit a retro diner a few blocks away, said he needed a break after a week of cracked pipes and clueless crews. Lila was knocked out upstairs, so I grabbed my hoodie and followed him to his Jeep, the engine growling as we rolled out. The diner was a time capsule, neon signs, teens giggling, the clatter of plates and grease heavy in the air. Gideon paid for milkshakes, handed me one, and said I'd better not choke at Checkers. I smirked, told him he'd be the one eating dust, and we jumped in. He won first, spun around with a smug grin, said I'd have to step it up. I lined up a move, and he leaned in, tweaking my strategy, his calloused hands brushing mine. My skin tingled, and I caught a side-eye from a kid at the jukebox, smirking our way. I won the next round, turned, and Gideon clapped, said I might have some game after all. I grinned, told him to watch his back, and we kept at it, jabs flying, laughs too loud, tension humming under every move. Mid-game, he went for fries, and I sat, fiddling with a straw. A waitress, mid-20s, tattooed, swung by with a coffee pot, paused, and nodded at Gideon across the room. "He your dad?" she asked, curious, maybe wary. I fumbled, said no, he's my cousin, forcing a laugh. She squinted, said we seemed close, and moved on. My chest tightened. Did she sense something? Gideon came back, handed me fries, asked why I looked spooked. I said the table was greasy, took a long sip, dodged his eyes. He didn't press, just sat close, his knee brushing mine under the booth for a second before he shifted. We finished, I beat him barely, and he said I'd gotten lucky, promising a rematch. The drive home was quiet, the Jeep's cab feeling tighter, some old blues tune on low. He caught my eye at a stop sign, and I asked what he was staring at. He said I held my own out there. I shot back he wasn't half bad either. His hand lingered on the gearshift, close to my leg, and I didn't move. Ever feel like you're daring fate to flinch? That was us, pushing it. We got home late, Lila's car still there, she hadn't budged. Gideon killed the engine, and we sat in the dark, silence thick. He tapped my shoulder, said I was a riot, voice low. I nodded, said he wasn't the worst, and bailed fast, pulse hammering. Inside, he locked up, and I felt him linger as I hit the stairs. I didn't look back, but his stare burned. The line we were walking was fraying, and we weren't slowing down. Next morning, Gideon was out front, wrestling with a busted porch railing that had been wobbling since summer. Lila had left for another shift, leaving the house empty. I watched him from the dining room, sleeves pushed up, hammer driving nails into splintered wood under a cloudy sky. Sweat shone on his neck as he worked. I grabbed a water bottle, figured I'd be civil, and stepped out, gravel crunching under my boots. He looked up, wiped his brow, and took the bottle with a quick grunt, chugging half. I leaned on a porch post, asked why he didn't call a pro. He laughed, said he liked the grind, tossed me a hammer, told me to pitch in. I grabbed a nail, flubbed a few swings, and he stepped over, guiding my grip, steady, quick. That spark hit again, sharp, and I pulled back, nailed it clean. He nodded, said I caught on fast. We hammered away, side by side, the rhythm tight, and I caught myself watching him, how he moved, all focus and grit. He joked I'd owe him if the railing held through winter, and I shot back he'd owe me for saving it. He chuckled, stepped closer, handed me another nail, fingers brushing mine, slow, on purpose. He held my gaze, said I was getting too good at this, and my throat tightened. I mumbled about practice, but the air got heavy. Then the neighbor, Mr. Vance, a nosy retiree, leaned over the fence, asking if Gideon needed a hand. I flinched, dropped the hammer, and he turned, cool as ever, said his helper had it covered. Vance squinted, said we looked like a good team, his tone probing. I forced a grin, said I was just lending a hand, and he lingered before heading off. Gideon handed me the hammer, muttered Vance should butt out, and I laughed, hands shaky. He asked if I was good. I said yeah, just off balance, but I felt Vance's prying vibe hanging. He drove the last nail, stepped back, wiped his hands on his cargoes, and sized me up. I said it looked solid. He grinned, said we built something strong, words loaded. I didn't know how to respond. We went inside, he grabbed a soda, I stuck to water, and he sprawled on the couch, patting the spot beside me. I hesitated, sat with a gap, but he slid closer, said I'd earned a break. His arms stretched along the back, not touching but close, and the pull sharpened, the house too still. A couple days later, Lila had a day off but spent it running chores, leaving us alone by lunch. Gideon came in early from a job, dirt on his boots, and found me slouched on the couch, scrolling videos. He dropped his keys, said he needed old work logs from the shed for a project, asked if I'd help. I shrugged, ditched my phone, and followed him out, the ground cold under my socks. The shed was a mess, crates stacked, tools everywhere, a bare bulb flickering. He pulled out a box marked past jobs, and I knelt beside him, sorting through faded reports and grainy photos. He handed me a stack, pics of him on pipeline gigs, younger, smirking, and I teased his old buzz cut. He nudged me, laughing, said I wouldn't have survived the 80s. We kept digging, and he showed me a shot from a damn job, said he'd nearly wiped out once. I said he must have been fearless. He paused, looked at me, and said some risks paid off. My stomach twisted, but I stuck to the photos, dodging his hint. The box emptied, and he leaned back, jacket hiking up, showing a strip of skin. I reached for another crate. He did too, and our hands bumped, scattering papers. We crouched to grab them, heads close, and he picked up a photo, a crew picnic, him grinning, said I'd have fit right in, wild and loud like me. His voice dropped, and I met his eyes, the space tightening, bulb humming. My breath caught. Then the side door slammed. Lila, back early, shouting about a forgotten receipt. I shot up, heart racing, and Gideon swore, shoving papers back. I tossed a stack in, ran to the kitchen, yelling I was helping with clutter. She asked if we needed anything. I squeaked no, and Gideon brushed past, saying he'd found his logs. She grabbed her receipt and left, clueless. He shot me a look, said we dodged a bullet, and I laughed, shaky, clutching the counter. We weren't done testing the limit. Thursday rolled in, Lila back on nights, and the house felt like ours again. Gideon came home, tossed his work vest, and said he'd been itching for a trip to a lake 2 hours east, trout, a break from the grind. I was half watching a comedy clip and said sure, needing to ditch the buzz I'd been carrying. We packed a cooler, waters, bait, rods, and hit the road, Jeep rattling. The lake was calm, a few old anglers scattered along the shore, water glassy under a fading sky. Gideon set up chairs, handed me a rod, showed me how to thread bait, his hand steady, mine slipping. I dropped it, and he laughed, said I'd spook the fish. We cast, sat, and let the silence build, charged, not heavy. He cracked a water, offered me one, and our fingers brushed, a spark I ignored. Fish weren't biting, but we didn't care. He told stories of job site flops, guys losing tools in mud, fights over lunch, and I loosened up, shared a tale about crashing a fair once. He said he'd have been my sidekick. The sun sank, sky burning orange, and he stood, stretching, shadow over me. I looked up. He held my gaze, said I made days like this stand out. I said he wasn't the worst to hang with, voice soft. He stepped closer, messed with my line, hand lingering near mine. An old angler upstream shouted about a catch, and Gideon turned to clap, giving me space. I grabbed more bait from the Jeep, he followed, and our arms tangled in the cooler. He didn't pull back, said the day was perfect, voice low. I nodded, caught in it. We stayed till dark, drove back windows down, silence loud. I knew it wasn't just me, it was real, growing. Back home, past 1 a.m., Lila still out, the house was a void. I flipped channels, TV glowing. Gideon came down post-shower, damp hair, old hoodie and jeans, a bag of pretzels in hand. He sat beside me, close, tossed the bag between us, said I could pick since he'd nabbed the remote last time. I landed on a trivia show rerun, and he mopped the host's glasses. I laughed, leg brushing his as I leaned back. He stretched his arm along the couch, heat close, not touching. I grabbed pretzels. He stole some from my hand, fingers lingering slow. I froze, met his grin, shoved him, told him to get his own. He leaned in, swiped another, elbow nudging me. The air thickened, trivia show fading, his breathing matching mine. He muted it, said it was too loud to focus, and his hand landed between us. I turned, asked what was up. He said he didn't know how we got here but wasn't complaining. I said same, and he slid closer, knee on mine, firm, deliberate. Pulse hammering, I stayed put. Ready for the big moment? Here it comes. He grabbed the pretzels, set them aside, arm brushing my leg slow, testing. I held still, watching. He said the lake felt like just us, and I agreed, voice shaky. His fingers tapped the cushion, slid, stopped short of mine. I shifted, closed the gap, his fingertips brushing, light, electric. He leaned in, the face close, said I'd been stuck in his head too much. I said he'd been in mine, and he straightened, swung a leg over, hand on my arm, pulling me near. His other hand hit my waist, tugging me half into his lap, heart racing, his breath warm, close. His grip tightened, sliding me forward, legs tangling, my hands on his chest, his roaming my back. We were locked, tension screaming, then the front door lock clicked. Mila, early. I yanked back, crashed to the couch's edge, gasping. Gideon stood, raking his hair. I bolted upstairs, muttering about bed, slammed my door, and leaned against it, shaking. I'd nearly lost it all. Next day, I packed a bag, crashed at a friend's, said I needed air. This is yours now, nameless, 'cause I can't carry it anymore. I spent the night in a haze of broken sleep and stark clarity. Every beat of my heart rang like a warning in the quiet dark of my friend's chilly guest room. I lay awake, replaying every second, Gideon's intense stares, the electric graze of his fingers, and that jarring moment when Lila's key broke our secret. I'd almost lost everything, and now I was fleeing, not just from a place, but from a version of myself I didn't know anymore. Morning crept in, gray and unforgiving. I dragged myself up and stared out a dusty window at a world that seemed too calm for what I felt. There was a tug in my gut, a mix of regret and freedom. I remembered how Gideon's touch sparked something wild in me, a dangerous, magnetic pull that made the chaos almost addictive. But it had ended in betrayal and confusion. I wasn't sure if I was running toward liberation or deeper into a toxic maze. With shaky resolve, I packed my past, a worn duffel, my phone buzzing with unread texts, and memories I couldn't shake. Stepping into the crisp Boise morning, each step felt heavy yet sure. I couldn't shake the rush of adrenaline, the echo of that forbidden dance with Gideon. The city, with its quiet streets and blank faces, suddenly felt like a stage for my own reckoning. I wandered at first, passing faded signs and buzzing cafes, my thoughts spinning as fiercely as the fall leaves around me. There was a weight in the air, as if every breeze carried whispers of my choices, whispers pushing me to face the storm inside. I ended up at an empty lot, where rusted fences and cracked pavement spoke of forgotten days. I sank onto a crumbling curb, gripping the rough edge until my hands ached, and let the silence wrap around me. It was there I faced the raw truth. I was done being discarded, done hiding in the shadows of secrets and lies. Gideon's voice still echoed, taunting me. Real was more than surviving chaos. It was about carving my own path from the ruins. With every passing second, I felt a shift, a quiet but fierce rebirth rising from the wreckage of that reckless night. I recalled the raw heat in his eyes, the dangerous pull that once promised escape from my rut. But as the rush faded, the cost of that reckless closeness hit hard. I'd been caught in a web of desperate need and a fragile hope that someone could see past my mess. The truth was, I needed to find strength in my own mirror, not in someone else's chaotic vow. As the day wore on, I decided this was my pivot. I couldn't erase what happened, but I could shape what it meant for my future. I walked the city, letting the sharp air clear my mind. Every step was a quiet vow to reclaim my story, to build a life not defined by one wild, dangerous night. I remembered flashes of laughter and pain shared with Gideon, but also the sting of betrayal and the heavy weight of regret. Those memories were now tools, reminders of the fire that once burned in me and the potential to rise from its ashes. By evening, I returned to the cheap motel room I'd grabbed on impulse. I sat by the window, watching the last light fade over the distant hills, and finally let myself breathe deep. In that still moment, I accepted that my past was a string of flawed, explosive moments that had shaped me into someone tough and real. I wouldn't let the chaos own my future. Instead, I'd use it as fuel, a raw, undeniable fuel to become who I was meant to be. I jotted a few lines in a battered notebook, each word a nod to the nights I'd spent in fear and the mornings laced with fragile hope. I wrote about the dangerous pull of self-destruction and the fierce promise of self-discovery. In the margin, I scrawled one word: enough. It was a vow, a promise to stop letting the ghosts of that wild past steer my path. As night took the sky, I knew a spark still burned deep inside me. That spark was mine alone, untouched by the reckless heat of those chaotic moments. I was free, scarred, bold, and ready to face whatever came next, on my own terms. And in that final, quiet defiance, I found a strange peace, a promise of renewal amid the ruins.